Hi, this is Everetts Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. And today I'm broadcasting from Chesapeake, Virginia, and I want to welcome all of you aboard to show you what I'm going to do today. I'm broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch, all simultaneously. So I hope all of you out there are having a nice day, and sign in. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and give me a thumbs up on the other stations, and leave me some comments. My wife Gloria is in the studio with me today. She's helped monitoring the program and checking the messages. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different subject. It's going to be a seascape, and I'm going to really concentrate on showing you how I do rocks and also water. So I'm going to go over to my painting table and let's get started. Okay, this is my reference photograph. You can see here it's got a landscape in the background and lots of water here flowing into the shoreline and all these rocks. So I'm going to concentrate on the rocks today and the water, but I got to put in a little bit of background. So this is my reference photograph that I'm going to be painting today, and I'm calling it Seascape. So I've done a design sketch, which put in the dark areas and the light areas, and then areas I'm going to concentrate on. So this is my design sketch, and this is really my value study. Okay, I'll concentrate here on the flow of the lights and dark. And what it looks like here, the eye will come in here, and this will point you out to this section and take you on back to the impact area. So the impact area will really be back here in the background. Back here toward this area here will be the impact area. Okay, let me introduce some of my my tools here today. I'm going to use the Hake brush, the new Hake brush I have on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And this is a brand new brush I'm using. This is a natural hair, goat hair. It's very soft, but it covers a lot of area it covers a lot of area very quickly. I'll use that for the sky, and I'll use that for the water. I've got the 3/4 inch. Let me turn my light on over here. Make it a little better. I got the 3/4 inch Holbein flat brush. I'll use that there a little bit in the background. I've also got another flat brush, which is the Silver Brush Black Velvet 1/2 inch flat, and I've got the Silver Brush Black Velvet number 8 round. Okay, and also in addition to that, I'll be using the Holbein number 4 rigger. Colors I'm going to be using today, I've got laid out here on my palette. I'm going to be using Ultramarine Blue up here at the top. Off to the right is Payne's Gray, and down here at the bottom I have Lemon Yellow, Yellow Ochre, and Burnt Sienna. So those are the 5 colors I'm going to use today to do the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start with, I'm going to work from the background coming forward. So get my sketch out of the way. Now this is Gemini 140-pound watercolor paper. This is the paper I use a lot on all my paintings. It's 140-pound archival Gemini, and it's also available on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And I've done the outline of my sketch on here. There's the background hills, and up here forward is the rocks and the water. So I've got a sketch all ready to go. And I'm gonna start in the background here, and I'll be moving forward. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the sky in. So I'll take the second Hake brush, which is the 2-incher. I call this a large brush. I'll put a little bit of water in that. And I've got my board elevated about 5 or 10 degrees, just so it'll slope down, so the water will flow a little easier. It'll help the paint move. So I'm going to wet the sky first with a Hake brush. It'll help the watercolor flow a little easier. Okay, so the first color I'm going to put in, I'm going to mix up a little bit of yellow ochre, just a little bit of yellow ochre. And I want to warm up the sky just a little bit down here at the horizon area. Just warm it up a little bit. Put a little bit of yellow ochre in there. Okay, I'm going to go to my ultramarine blue. A little darker. Okay. Now with that water flowing down to the bottom at an angle, and then putting in the blue sky with the Hake brush. I really like this brush. I've been using it every day now doing my paintings, and I'm getting a lot more experience with using it. It takes a little bit of practice because it holds so much water. You have to be careful how much water and how much paint you put in the brush. Okay, that's going to be a nice light sky. I'll start there. And what I think I'll do before I put the next layer on, I'm going to dry that. So I'm going to turn the hairdryer on. Okay. I'll just get that one that didn't want that run into the sky because I'm going to work on the hills up here now. So I'm going to take the smaller flat brush here, the silver brush, and maybe I'll use the 3/4 inch and the silver brush. Use both of these because I want to get in there. And first of all, I'm going to mix up a little bit of what I call hill colors. And I'm going to do the background first. Over here is background hill, and it's in the background, so it's going to have a little bit of lighter tone. It's going to be a little bit. I'm going to make it blue because it's in the background, so I'm going to make it a blue. I'm using the 3/4 inch Holbein flat brush, and this comes to a nice sharp edge. I do a lot of work with the flat brush because it's I'm very familiar with it, and it works very nice. This flat brush is so and it's such a smooth stroke, and so I'm going around this carefully next here to the two hills. This is the back hill. This is the one further away. I'm making a little bit of blue to push it back in the background. If you want an element to recede in your landscapes, you give it a cool color. Cool colors, which is blue in this case, recede. I'll put just a little bit of just another color. I just picked up a little bit of glycerin crimson just to give it a little bit of color back there, just to give a little bit of interest. Because this is going to be more toward the impact area in this area. Okay. All right, now I'm going to mix up a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm going to start painting in these hills here. I'm going to use a smaller round flat here so I can get in there to the edges. So this is the hill mass, which is the water's up against. And so I'm putting this in with a little bit of yellow ochre to give it a ground color. As I come forward, I'm going to get a little bit. I've got a little bit more color, which means it's going to be a little bit darker as I come forward. So I'm trying to get a little bit of perspective here as far as aerial perspective, because as you come closer to the foreground, the colors get a little richer, a little warmer. But you start cool in the background. As you come forward, you get a little bit warmer, and that gives you the impression of depth in the landscape. So I'm taking my time here because I've got this is a little bit of design here. I want to make sure I get these trees in here, so I'm putting in the rocks or the sand area on these hills, and it's a little sandy. Put a little bit of burnt sienna in this mixture. I want to get a little bit warmer, a little bit darker. So I'll put a little bit of burnt sienna in with the yellow ochre. Okay, now I'm going to take a smaller brush here, and I'm going to put in. Now I'm going to mix a green. There's trees back here, or bushes or trees and so forth. I'm going to mix my greens. Rather than use the green out of the palette, I'm going to mix it. I'm going to mix it. So I'm going to use the colors I have here. I'm going to take burnt sienna. Excuse me. This is ultramarine. I'm looking ultramarine blue, and I'm going to mix in the yellow lemon. You can see right away I get a nice green combination there. And I'm going to put that green up here in these trees. On the landmass. And I might leave a little bit of white paper showing because I like a little sparkle in my colors. So these are some of the trees up here in the landmass. So I'm getting and I'm using a smaller brush because I want to make a little, not too much definition, but I want to make it just a little small area up here. I don't want to get a bigger brush in there yet. I got a bigger brush to use later on. So this little detail here just gets it started. And you know, in watercolor, you put down a first layer, then you go back and you can improve on it by adding another color or another dark on top of what you're doing. So you can layer as you build. So I'm building really a light layer here to get started. And I may leave it the way it is, or I may add some color to it later. But for right now, I just want to get the color down. I'm blocking in. This is called really the block in phase. I'm getting the colors that I want here. So these greens here are really just the trees up here on this hill mass. And I can switch to a bigger brush now. I get away from that edge there. I can get a bigger brush, mix up a little bit more of that lemon yellow with that ultramarine. Give me some more green, get a little darker here. That mixture there of ultramarine and the yellow lemon gives me a nice natural green look. And it's much more effective to, I think, to mix your colors than to use the pure tube color out of the palette. I use green, but I always mix it with another color anyway. So, but today I wanted to use the mixtures here on my palette. I want to try to limit today I'm using a limited palette. I'm only using 5 colors for this whole painting. So this is the green mixture using the blue and the yellow I have on the palette. And I could have used a little bit of yellow ochre too. So that's another choice I may make. Okay, I want to block that in. Okay, now I'm going to go back with a smaller brush here. I'm going to put a little more detail in the background here. I'm going to take this yellow ochre, and I'm going to put a little bit of definition back here in the background. There's a part of the landmass has some color back there. I want to put that in. Okay. And this is sand and rocks and everything up here on the coastline. So I'm just kind of making little marks here to give it a rough. I want a rough texture here. I don't want it to be a smooth texture. I want it to be rough. So I'm going back in here and making a rough brush stroke to give it a little more texture, look. All right. Okay, so about ready to start working on the water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this flat brush. I'm going to take the flat brush. I'm going to use Ultramarine Blue. And I'm going to start in the background here on the horizon. And the horizon line is straight across. That's the thing about water. Every time you paint in the horizon with water, it has to be level. So that's one key thing about painting water is whatever you have the horizon line, it has to be straight. And in front of this now is going to be some waves. So I'm going to leave some white paper here showing that will indicate the wave motion in this water. I'm coming across here and putting the bluer water, which is reflecting the color from the surroundings, and in front of that blue is the wave action. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. I like that so far. I like that. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the big brush, the one I've been waiting to use. Okay, so the Hake holds a lot of water. I'm going to do all of this section here using just a Hake, and so it won't take very long to put in this whole water scene. The whole water scene will be very quickly done. But I'm going to mix up a couple of colors here because I don't want the colors to be just blue. I want to have a little bit of variety of colors. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of the ultramarine to start out with. Get a nice little puddle there, so I'll have a lot of water to cover. And then I'm going to mix I'm going to have a little bit of this green. You know, water has different colors in it, and one of the things about the water is that because it has rocks and it has algae and so forth in the water, it has a green texture or a green color, and even some brown. I mean, there's rocks under there underneath the water, so they'll be a little brown. So I've got really three colors here I want to kind of focus here about. So I'll put a little bit of burnt sienna in there, just a little bit. So ultramarine, I got a little bit of ultramarine mixed in with the yellow lemon to give me a green, and I've got a little bit of burnt sienna over here just to give me a little bit of brown mixed in, maybe with a little bit of yellow ochre. So I load up my brush, lots of paint. Over here, I'm going to start. There's a little wave coming in here, so I can get a little wave action here on the surface here. So just by touching the corner of this brush, it gives me a really abstract and realistic look. I don't really have to do much more than just touch this brush to the paper. Now I'm going to pick up another color now. I've had a little bit of blue. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that green. Put it in with the blue. It gives me that little bit of green color. And as I come across here, you can see just by touching the paper with a brush, I'm not doing that much, just not much of a brush stroke, just tapping it on. I'm going to come down across here. And this goes into the, right up to the shoreline. There's a wave going into the shoreline right there. Now, this water is going to have a lot of motion here because it's going to go back and forth. So I'm going to put a little bit of action here on the waves, leaving the white paper because there's white. This is a very rocky coastline, so there's going to be lots of wave action here coming in. So I'm going to leave some white. The white paper simulates the wave action with the water hitting the rocks below, and some of the rocks are on top. They're big enough to go on top. And I'm going to come down here, another wave into the beach. Okay. And back here is just it's just mostly, in this section in here, it's mostly white water because it's hitting a lot of rocks underneath the surface here. So it's really, this is just showing a little bit of the water, but the rest is all going to be foam from the rocks underneath the water, creating some froth. I grew up on the seashore, so I've been around the ocean a long time. I love watching the water flow, and so living near the ocean gives you a great opportunity to see lots of waves and lots of water. I'm going to put a little more of this green. As I get closer now, I'm going to put a little more green mixture into that blue because it got, again, the water changes color as it gets closer to the shoreline. Okay. And there's a big old wave hitting this foreground rock here, so I'm going to put in some color behind that wave just to give me an opportunity to paint that in there. But I'm going to leave the paper white as it comes across. As it comes across in front of that rock, there'll be a lot of white paper showing here. So this is about the end of the water because that's just all basically leaving the white paper to show the wave formation. Now this is what I call block in. I may go in and add some colors, a little bit more colors in some of these sections, but I got the block in. That's what I'm really interested in, is the block in. And I think what I'll do now, take that smaller brush, and there's a little patch of blue up here behind this wave. A little patch of blue next to the landmass. A little patch of blue. I'll put that in there. The wave hitting the surf up there. Okay, now I'm gonna let that dry there, and while it's drying, I'm going to put in some of these rocks. And what I'm going to use the 3/4 inch flat brush to put the rocks in. Now the rock color is going to be most of my darks, so I'm going to use Burnt Sienna. And Ultramarine. It gives me a nice dark brown. Then I'm going to introduce a little bit of the Payne's Gray, which really darkens it up. Payne's Gray added to a color automatically will darken it. And if you put too much in, it may dull it down, but just enough touch to change the value to make it much darker. So I'm going to now start with, I think I'll start with this big, I'll leave that one alone a little bit. I'm going to start with this big rock right here. I'm going to start with a big rock in the foreground. I'm going to put the dark color here. I've got a design. I designed the shape of this this rock, and so I'm just following my design lines. I've got a drawing under here which I'm following. So I'm just basically outlining the shape I have here. I'm putting the shape in of the rock, but then I'm going to do something special to it here to give me some texture. And let's see, let me get some more of this color in. So this big brush, I'm able to go in and do a lot. And I put some more darks in. I'll get that the Payne's gray in there to give me a nice dark background color. So a rock has got characteristics of a hard edge, rugged looking shape, and that defines a rock. Okay, now this is going to be the tip for today. I took an old credit card and cut it in half. Took an old plastic credit card, and I'm going to use the scraping technique. And the scraping technique, I'm able to pull away some of the paint I have here. Now, while it's still wet, and I watch it now just a little bit. The shine is still there, but that's fine. I can. That's a good way to start because you still want it to be a little bit damp. The shine is still on the paper, and the paper is drying. The paint's drying, but I can go ahead and start taking some off. So what I'm going to do is go in and I'm going to drag across the rock. And I'm putting the highlight in at the top. I'm scraping in the highline and giving it some texture. Okay. Now these rocks over here are pretty well done too. So I'll take a smaller brush because it's a small area. I'm going to put this rock in back here. The same mixture, burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of ultramarine blue and a touch of Payne's gray to give me a darker color. So there's the rock shape I have. And it's still wet. I do want it wet. If it gets too dry, you can't scrape the paint off. So you have to hit it at a time where you put the paint on, let it soak into the paper a few minutes, just a few seconds, and then you go in and then you can pull it out. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to pull out some of this paint. Okay. Just to give a little character, a little dimension. But what I'm doing is I'm pulling the highlight out on the rock. The sun's coming in from the side here, from the left side, so I'm using the left side of the rock as my light area from the light source. So I paint in the basic shape, and I wait just maybe 5-10 seconds while let the paint soak a little bit into the paper. With this kind of paper, watercolor paper, the paint gets absorbed into the fibers, and once it gets in there, then you can, if it's still damp or wet, in this case the shine's still there, then you can go in and scrape off some of it. But the part that's been absorbed into the paper will be there, but you can scrape off some of the top and get a nice indication, maybe in this case here, highlights on the rock. Okay, I'm going to continue on now. I've done several of those. Now down here, I'm going to pick some areas. This area down here, we're going to do a bunch of rocks. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to paint in an area, a zone. And this is really the dark zone down here. So I'm going to put in some paint. These are dark. These are the dark rock area down here. This is going to be because they're in shadow basically, and they've also been soaked by the surf. So when a rock gets wet, it also gets dark. So these are the wet rocks that are still have just been hit by the surf. And I'm blocking in. This is the phase here is a block in. We're blocking in shapes, you're blocking in colors, getting some value going. You can always go back in watercolor or in watercolor media, and you can always add color and values on top of what you started. But at least I want to get some of the shapes started and get them started down here. And now I'm going to go in with my scraper, and not all of them, but just a few. I'm going to pull out some highlights. I don't want to overdo. I don't want to do every one of them, but every so often I'm going to just take one and get a little scrape to give a little idea of a highlight, just a little highlight. Maybe this one over here. Okay, and I'm going to continue on now. These rocks down here. This whole area. This whole area is going to be in more or less shadow. So I'm just going to indicate a little bit of space here where there's shapes. I'm really just painting in a little bit of indication of shapes here just to indicate that they're rocks. It's a rocky coast. These areas will be defined as some of the main characters here. Now, as I come further up the coastline here, up toward this area, the value gets a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take the same brush, but I'm going to use just Burnt Sienna and a little bit of yellow ochre. And now I'm going to start putting a little bit of lighter value here, a little bit of lighter value. And again, I'm going to have some rocks up here that are going to show off. So I'm going to put a couple scrapes up here just to get some highlights up here. But the majority of these are warmer value, warmer color, lighter value, warmer color. And scrape out a few more, just to indicate a few of them, not everything, just a few indications that these are rocks. Now I'm taking a smaller brush. This is one rock here that's by itself, so I'll put that in. And there's a little one over here, so that just kind of defines. The rest is all underwater. This is all surf coming up here, up next to this land. Okay, now let's see. I'm looking over where I want to go now. This area here is just going to be covered with shadow when I put this over here, this section over here. So what I think I'll do now is I'm going to take the 1/2-inch brush. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to put a little more value up here in the trees. So I'm just going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue mixed in with the yellow lemon. I'm going to go back. I'm going to just add a little more value to these trees up here. So I'm going now, and I'm adding a little bit of texture. So I'm just adding a little color to what's already there, and I'm just adding a little bit of brush stroke there to give a little bit of texture. And really, this is really an impressionistic painting. I'm an impressionist artist, so I really, realistically, you could paint in a lot of details and so forth, but I just like to capture the essence and really just the moment that I see it. Just capture the feeling that I see. There's a feeling of these branches, these bushes up here, trees up here on the top of this hill. And then what I think I'll do now is just take a little bit of that yellow ochre and I'm reducing some of the white areas. I'm reducing some of the whites. I'm going around the edges here and adding a little bit of yellow ochre. And also it gives me a little bit more texture. And reducing the white areas. Just painting over top of what's there. But also keeping the texture and the appearance of what's there. Okay. And I think I can put a little dark. These are little dark rocks, not rocks, but they're parts of the sand that got wet, so they'll be a little bit darker along the edge. The surf is hitting up against the sand here and is leaving some wet areas which are darker. So we'll just leave that like that. Okay. And okay, I'm gonna right now. Let me dry a couple areas. I'm gonna go back in and do a couple more things. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't show you or tell you about, but maybe a surprise. But anyway, it's like opening up a Christmas present. I put a little bit of masking fluid over here next to these rocks because I wanted to show a little bit of splashing. And rather than do the paint strokes to do that, I went in with a little bit of masking fluid, and I used the fine line mask pen to do that, just to go in and do a little detail. But that gives me a little more impression of splashing waves. The masking fluid. This is the fine lined masking fluid. It comes it comes in an applicator, and then you pull it off, and I can go in and do very fine detail, almost dots if I want to, or lines, or cover a small area. And then I use a bottle. I use another kind of masking fluid, which I didn't use today, but this is a Holbein masking fluid, which I use it with a paintbrush, and I can put that on larger areas. But for small areas, this one works out just fine. The fine line mask pen. Okay, there's a little bit of splashing there, which is okay. That's all I wanted to show. All right, what I'm going to do now is going to take the rigger brush, and I'm going to. No, before I do that, I gotta put in some more shadows down here. So I'm going to take. Use the Hake. The Hake will do it. Now, if you use the right tool for the right job, that's what you do. The Hake is a large brush that'll cover a lot of. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of gray, a little bit of burnt sienna in there, a little bit of ultramarine, and a touch of Payne's gray. And a little more blue in there. I'm testing on my test sheet over. That's better. Okay. And what I want to do now is go in here, and I'm going to put in a shadow back here of these rocks because they're really in shadow. They really don't show. They're all wet, so I'm going to put them. I'm going to make them wetter. So this Hake brush, I can cover a large area very quickly. I'll bring it up here to this point here. I'll use this just to kind of feather it into the other area. And as far as the far as the blue is concerned, let me take a little more blue. Yeah, that's good. Now the lighter colors up here, I can do the same thing. I can take a little bit of the yellow ochre using the Hake, and I can kind of cover those in a little bit, cover up some of that white paper a little bit. Okay. Now down here under this wave, I want to put a little dark. The area behind the wave, it will be a little bit in shadow because it's out of the sunlight. So I'm going to put a little more shadow here under this wave formation coming across. Okay. That's about what I wanted. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is take my I'm going to take my Ultramarine on my rigger, my number 4 rigger from Holbein. And I'm going to go in now. I'm going to do a little bit of just a little bit of touch here and there. I want a little more definition in some of these waves. So I'm going back and doing just little touches here and here to give a little more depth, a little more feeling of movement. This water is really moving up here. It's moving into the coastline, and it's hitting those rocks, splashing up. Over here is a wave over here coming, so I'll put a little bit of shadow under that piece of water there to show a little bit of shadow. A little bit of shadow out here on this wave front. And a little more shadow on this one. This is the one that's in shadow. This part of the wave is in shadow. It's behind the crest, crashing across that rock. So this is all in shadow down here. Now a little bit of that green. I'm going to use the rigger now. It can be used this way. I push it from the side to give me a little texture. Pushing the rigger back and forth on the side gives me texture. Okay, last part of definition I'm going to do. Back here in the background, I'm going to put a couple boats in the water. So what I'm going to do is take some color. I think I'll use ultramarine for one. And I'm going to put a sailboat back here. So I'm going to put one. Okay, the wind blowing. I'll put him out there. Put the mask. The mask is there, and then I got the sail here. So it's going to be in silhouette. It's going to be a dark sail against the lighter sky. So I'm going to be in silhouette. Okay, that's one sailboat. And I think I'm going to put another one in. I'll change the color. I'll make this one. I think I'll use the Burnt Sienna. That's not a good color. I'll make a gray. A little bit gray. This is a little bit further back, so it won't be as distinct as the blue. So it'll be, I'll put a little one out here further back. All right. Well, I think I've completed what I want to accomplish. What I wanted to do today was I wanted to do a seascape scene, and I wanted to really emphasize rocks, and I used the scraping motion with this piece of an an old credit card, cut it in half, and scraped it, gave me texture on top of the rocks. And then the water itself is, you know, like crashing waves, using a brush work to go horizontal strokes because it's level, and then also leaving lots of white paper because of the waves crashing and hitting the shoreline and also crashing up against the waves. Now I've got some more. I got some more masking fluid I left down in here. Let's see. I'm gonna dry it first. And those were just indicate the water flowing up here between the rocks, around the rocks, and so forth. Okay, let's take you back to the main camera. Okay, let me turn that overhead light on. Off. Yep, there's a lot of glare on that. Okay, well, it was a good exercise today. Painting the surf with water and rocks and so forth is sometimes a challenge, especially in watercolor or any media. But to get the brush strokes and then to get the values that make it look like a real water, and also to work out the wave formations. So I think the technique I was showing you today with the scraping action using the credit card, it's just to show texture and to give a little definition to, especially if you have a lot of them. If you have a lot of rocks, then you want to use a little bit more than just leaving odd-looking shapes out there in the water or on the ground somewhere. So that technique can be used in any part of the painting, a landscape in the water or a landscape on the ground near a mountain and so forth. So that's something I wanted to show as a tip today. And all the brushes I used and all the paints I used today are on my website, everettswatercolors.com. That Hake brush does a lot of work that I really like. I'm going to start using it more and more in future paintings. And I did a limited palette today, just 5 colors, and mixing the colors to get green, and mixing the other colors to get a darker brown or a lighter brown. So you don't need that many colors to finish a painting. Try to limit it to at least 5 colors. Too many more colors really makes it look confusing. It's better to consolidate and use the minimum or limited number of colors you need for one particular painting. So I enjoyed this today. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave me some comments and subscribe to my YouTube channel and give me some comments on YouTube and the rest of the sites out there. So I appreciate you looking in today. And I'll be back next week, which is the 20th of December. So I'll see you then.